The story of the hellhound. It was the years of the bubonic plague. Religion spiked at its peak, people begging their higher powers to save them from what they would most inevitably succumb to. Monasteries began hosting their services in smaller buildings, allowing only a select few to come in and pray with them. One such group was a tiny horde of monks. They stashed themselves away in a plague-free zone of the city. They were cruel, and they used the mask of hope to bribe people into paying what little they had to be saved. As the months went by and their trickery grew, people began whispering of a beast, an evil beast. Its maw was that of a dog, with jaws of an alligator, strong, long and full of teeth. Its eyes, well, it had eyes of the darkest depths, pools of red spiraling through orbs of black smoke, death in every glance it gave. Finally, its body was that of a wolf, long and narrow, sleek and poised, yet stealthy and unsuspecting. Huge. They describe it as huge, much larger than any pet that would have been spotted around the village. Yet, the poser monks brushed this off, laughing at the stupidity and, as they called them, sick delusions. One night, a storm raced through the area, giving a welcome relief to most areas. The buildings were damaged, but there would now be fresh water to give to the ill, something everyone had wanted for a while. One building in particular seemed the worst hit, the monastery. One of the monks rushed out of the large oak doors, hinges creaking as they swung shut once more. He made his way to a large shed, the wood peeling to the side, windows busted and door caved in. Horrified, he scrambled through the ruins of what once was, scooping up jars full of coins, checking over his precious gold. The posers came out as well, surveying the damage, speaking quietly of where they would now hide their lies. The monk, who had been coddling over his fortune, happened to stand up. At that moment, a sharp black blur crossed by one of the busted boards on the back, making not a sound as it went. From one point to the next, zigzagging further and further away. Finally, it reached the top of a small hilltop, twisted its massive neck around and locked eyes with the monk. Chills raced up his spine, hair standing on end. His hands went numb, dropping the jars to his feet with a quick step back. The beast simply stretched its leathery lips back in what looked like a grin before sliding off into the shadows, where it disappeared. In a stupor, the monk stumbled back to the monastery. What had he just seen? Was he going crazy? Was he getting sick? That night, as everyone lay sound asleep, tales of thievery in their heads, one man didn't have the same pleasure. His dreams were filled of the canine-like animal, its bony spine poking through the papery flesh and thick fur. He'd scream for mercy as it ran to him. The jolt awake, just as it'd leap, jaws open wide, with acidic green drool stretching from fang to fang, Finally, in one dream, it was different. The setting had changed to a graveyard, the hound weaving in and out of chalky grey headstones, chuckling lowly under its breath. Once it spoke, voice echoing around the frightened man. You see me. You're doomed. From day one, twice you aren't so fortunate. 'Tis nothing but dead you will become. Thrice I'll find you, grab you from your bed, rip you from limb to limb, and decapitate that empty head. It cackled at its rhyme, disappearing in a smoky haze as it leapt off of a weeping angel and hit the shadows, paws singeing the grass beneath its weight. Gasping for air, he awoke. The rest of the day he remained skittish and reclusive, searching endlessly through books, even rushing into town to find people who he heard speaking of this eternal nightmare. Yet, no one seemed to be able to answer anything. Each shake of a head and a laugh sent him into a state of ultimate hopelessness. On his way back to the monastery, the smell of sulphur wafted through the air, catching his attention. Through morbid curiosity, as he searched the area, his mind reeled with what it could be, and just when his heart began settling, his worst thoughts became a reality. There, standing in the middle of the path, was the hellion, its long ears domed back against its head, evil grin exposing all of its fangs, tail switching back and forth with waves of ebony smoke following in suit. However, just as soon as it was there, it was gone, simply vanishing. Not knowing what to do, the crazed monk scrambled back to his home, where he locked himself into his quarters for the day. The night, it was the same routine, the nightmares, the stupid little rhyme, and that horrible smell, this time accompanied with blood-curdling screams and cries for forgiveness. Months passed, the monk grew sick. His encounters with the townsfolk only exposed him more so to the disease that had been washing over the area, not to mention the stress and paranoid existence. Never peeking out the window, never going anywhere alone, he had, as it seemed, reverted back into being a child, scared of the dark. The other men lost interest in his ramblings, gave up on trying to help him, and went on with their scam. Though he hadn't seen his demon in quite a while, he knew it was there. He'd lie awake at night, feeling as if something was watching him through the window, yet he refrained from looking, knowing if he did, it'd be his last chance. Another storm rolled in from the mountains, the cold front meeting the summer heat, twisting and turning into its own demonic presence. The tornado tore through the town, uplifting houses and even most of the church's bell tower. Upon the storm's end, every one of the men piled out of the church, some taking it more logical than others. The night air was thick with smoke and debris, causing most of them to head inside to wait out the night for morning, planning on what they would do. However, the crazed monk stayed behind, cursing under his breath, pacing back and forth, begging for it to stop. He knew what caused this. That creature caused it. Of course it did. What else would explain it? Chuckling rose from the downed bell tower, the rubble moving smoothly as the beast walked out. Its muscles rippled beneath its fur, long legs walking in front of one another as it slowly made its way towards the man. Screams, that's all the others heard. Loud screams before they made it out of the door. Loud thumping, sounding like nothing else but large thudding of paws running down the door halted them. It would be the moments before they grew up, enough courage to peek out, and once there, they found nothing. The man was gone. There was no dog. There was no sulphuric smell. There was no evidence anything had even happened. In a panic, they piled back inside, only to stop at a small horror in front of them. There, in the oak doors, sat a paw print. Smoke rolled out from the indentation, splinters rising in all different directions. It was charred, but every one of them knew what it was. That's when they heard it behind them. Once you see me, to this day, the paw print remains in the door. Wendigo, a terrifying story. It was my friend Caden's birthday party about a month ago, and I must say it was pretty fun. My 3 friends, Enrique, Cody and Ian, and I went over to his party at his house. We went there on a Friday and stayed over for the night. We played video games, ate cake, and best of all, drank a crap ton of soda. This fun ensued until 3 o'clock in the morning, when his dad finally told us to lie down and fall asleep. We did the first thing, but not the second. We got some sleeping bags out and just talked. For another hour or so, we joked around, talked about some stuff, and then the topic of the Wendigo came up. The Wendigo is a cannibal demon of Native American mythology that I wrote a short, scary story about in my creative writing class in school. I let my friends read the story the day before, and they said it was scary, but I figured they were more scared by the picture on the cover page than the actual story. The picture sure was frightening. It showed the portrait of a Wendigo, the skull-like head of a deer placed on a human-like bipedal body with long narrow arms and fingers, and crouching long legs with hooves like a horse. The body looked like it was rotting away, as if the Wendigo was a corpse. It had blood dripping from its long sharp teeth. Enrique loved the fact that the Wendigo scared Cody and Caden so much he basically teased them in the black of night that it was coming to possess them, turning them into cannibalistic spirits. "Shut up," they would tell Enrique. "Seriously, shut up." "What? Are you scared?" he would taunt at them. I thought the entire thing was really funny, as of course there was no such thing as the Wendigo, but I could tell that they were getting even more afraid once Caden looked at a window without the blinds over it and thought that the Wendigo would stare at him through the window. He was too scared to actually get up and shut the blinds though, so I did. Enrique continued to tease them. He got out his laptop and googled images of the Wendigo. Then he went on the Wikipedia page for the Wendigo. He read aloud, "All cultures in which the Wendigo myth appeared shared the belief that human beings could turn into Wendigos if they ever resorted to cannibalism or alternatively become possessed by the demonic spirit of a Wendigo, often in a dream." "What's a demonic spirit?" Ian asked, watching the taunting unfold. Enrique googled it. He found out that a demonic spirit is like a ghost, except it can possess your body and have control over all of your actions. He also found out that if you say a demon's name out loud, you have summoned it. You have made it its duty to possess you. "Well, if that's true," Enrique said, "Wendigo, Wendigo, 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 come get me, Wendigo." "Enrique, shut up," Cody and Caden said, both of them on the verge of throwing something at his face. I interjected, "You guys, the Wendigo is fake. Now shut up and go to sleep." "Whatever, I'm tired anyway," Enrique said as he yawned, and we fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up and went to the bathroom. Nobody was up yet. I decided I would eat some cake from yesterday for breakfast. I went to the fridge and got some. As soon as I turned around, I let out a frightened screech. Enrique was up and was in my face. "Whoa, you scared me there," I said. No response. He just gave a face, a chilling face. His eyes were sunken in, and he gave me a non-smiling, wide-eyed, pale look. I sat down at the table and ate the cake. Soon Ian, Cody and Caden got up. A few hours later, my mom picked me up and I went home. That night I went to bed, afraid of the Wendigo. I remembered what Enrique said, and I became increasingly more and more frightened. Eventually, I gained enough confidence to finally just sit up in my bed and say, "It doesn't exist, so I'm going to say its name. Wendigo. Wendigo." A few seconds passed. "See, Taylor, there is no Wendigo," I told myself. Then I heard a scratching noise at the bedroom door. It started out barely audible before it became louder and louder and louder. Oh God, what have I done? The scratching noise was so loud I thought that it was going to break down my door, whatever it was. Finally, I got out of my bed and approached my door. As I started walking towards it, the scratching got louder and louder. My hand inches away from the knob. Was hesitant to open the door. From the time my hand was inches away from it to when I finally opened the door felt like an eternity. I twisted the knob slowly and slammed the door open. I didn't see anything. I heard a barking noise. I looked down and saw my bulldog, Fat Chops. Relieved, I let the dog into my room. On Monday, I returned to school. My school is a charter school that has a dress code, and on that particular day, I received a detention for forgetting to wear my belt. The next day, I had soccer practice, so I knew that I had to serve it that day. The day went on normally, but at 3 o'clock, I had to go to Mrs. Foster's room to serve my detention. I was the only one in the room with her. After a few minutes, she told me that she had to go somewhere really quick. Okay, I said. After a minute later, I saw Enrique outside the door. He came in. "What's up?" I said, glad that he was there. He looked at me with the same pale face he had given me earlier, with his sunken-in eyes and neutral expression. Are you okay, dude?" I said. No response. "Hello?" He got up and went into the corner of the room and just sat there. "Enrique," I said, growing more uneasy. "Enrique," I repeated. "Enrique, dude, you are starting to scare me." All of a sudden, he put up his face up at the ceiling and started to transform into a hideous, pale-skinned, jagged-toothed creature. Afraid, I started slowly moving backwards. He was possessed by the Wendigo. I broke the window in the classroom and ran out of there. Next to the school were some trees that I thought I could hide in. I ran probably 100 feet to get into the trees. As soon as I got into the foliage, I hid behind a tree trunk that was wider than me. I was afraid to look back at the school, but slowly I turned my head backwards. I was hesitant to, but I wanted to see if he was still following me. As soon as my eyes were facing towards the school, I was face to face with the demon. I ran further into the trees. They were covering up the sun, so it got darker. The air was very humid, yet cool breezes came by. Eventually, I think I lost him. It felt like I'd been running from the demon for hours. Sure enough, I looked at my watch and it was already 7 o'clock. Even though I had lost my pursuer, I still bit my fingernails in terror. Finally, I got out of the forest. The trees led me to a road lit with one street light. The road only had a few houses on it. I started walking down the road, looking down. When I raised my head, I saw under the streetlight my bulldog, Fat Chops. I ran to her and started petting her. "Who's a good girl?" "You are. Yes, you are," I said in a baby voice. "What are you doing down here, Fat Chops, huh? What are you doing?" She started whimpering. I looked behind me thinking that maybe she was whimpering because of something out of my field of vision. I was hesitant to look back, but I slowly turned my head and saw nothing. "Oh, it's okay, girl," I reassured her. I started walking down the road as Fat Chops followed, and as I started to getting further away from the streetlight, it got darker and darker. Eventually I saw another streetlight. Still, I kept on walking and saw another light further down. Finally I passed 5 of these posts, and underneath the light looked at the time on my watch. It was 9 o'clock. I had been on that road for 2 hours. I started running in a hurry and looked behind me. Fat Chops was nowhere to be seen. So I started running back, looking for my dog. "Fat Chops," I would call out. "Fat Chops." As I went under another streetlight, I looked at my watch. It was 12 o'clock. That seemingly short period of time was 3 hours. I went up to the light pole and saw a missing poster. For me. Past the streetlight, I looked at the house in front of it. It looked exactly like the houses I saw before. Dazed, I started running as fast as I could. I got to the next streetlight, checked the time and saw it was 1 in the morning. Even though it felt like 5 seconds had passed, I ran further and eventually the streetlights came closer and closer together. I looked down at my watch. Each minute passed in a fraction of a second. Finally, my clock read 3 a.m. and stopped. It was the devil's hour. Suddenly, I tripped on something and fell in the street. As I regained my footing, I looked down the street and saw a pair of very tall legs. As I looked up, I saw them connect to a skeleton-like body with long arms and slender fingers, and on top of that body, the skull-like head of a deer. "Come here," it said in a raspy, devilish voice. My body froze, and it started coming closer and closer and closer. It was right in my face, but then I regained my muscle movement. I fell back to the pavement, closed my eyes, and just hoped I would make it out alive. As soon as I opened them, it was morning, and I walked back to my house, and my mum sure was happy to see me. "Taylor, we missed you so much. Where have you been?" she said as I walked in. It was hard to tell her the story about what happened, so I didn't. "Do you know where Enrique is? He's been missing too," she told me. I simply nodded sideways. They never did find Enrique. Nobody knows what happened to him. But I do. The Wendigo hasn't quit either. At night I constantly hear a whispering in my ear. My window gets knocked on. I have nightmares about it. But before it can possess me in my dreams, I always wake up. I always fight for my body. Well, I'm not going to fight for it tonight. I'm done dealing with the Wendigo. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you really enjoyed tonight's content, and don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. If you have any scary stories, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares. And follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.